Black Economic Empowerment, BEE, has typically is primarily orientated towards companies and the ownership of companies. Employment equity is how you interact with your staff and who you can hire and the racial makeup of your staff. Employment equity as a ANC policy has been around since 1994, but it really gets solidified in the Employment Equity Act of 1998 that racializes hiring in this country for companies with 50 staff or more. So companies who have 50 staff or more have to now start conforming their the demographic profile of their workforce to look more and more like the broad demographic profile of the country. So every institution must essentially start looking the same. It's a very homogenizing kind of policy. The big story there is very recently finally got these very draconian regulations for the amended Employment Equity Act that start to provide for the first time explicit quotas, race, gender, disability quotas for various job grades across 18 sectors. We've never had this before, and this is just another data point in this escalation. And this has happened recently. The pressure that's been coming from the United States has been coming since January or February when President Trump was inaugurated. This has all happened since then, this escalation. So let's talk through a little bit about the Employment Equity Act. I've sketched out its explicit quotas. Let's talk about what this means. I mean, there's some absurdities that emerge from this, but maybe you want to sketch more of the background and the picture.
Yeah, I think that these definitely have connections to each other, so BE and employment equity. Again, let me start with a reference to Parliament. Just 2-3 weeks ago also, there was a minister or deputy minister, it was either Minister Nkosazana Meth, Minister of Labour, or a deputy in Parliament in a debate on these Employment Equity Act quotas. She was very aggressive, saying that we will push this transformation down the throats of people who oppose us, basically white people and, sensible people who understand the economic implications of what's happening here. Yeah. So again, a very aggressive posture from the ANC-controlled government. And yes, and so she's aggressive from the government side. Now, these quotas are now supposed to take effect in September. They were announced in April, and we are, together with our partners, NIASA and others, litigating against these. We are requesting an urgent interdict against the operation of these quotas. Because once these quotas are implemented from September, then companies will be expected to, within the next 5 years, decrease their white staff complement to as little as 4%. Some outliers are high, like agriculture, it's 60% top management would be allowed to be white, but that's just telling the farmer that his son will not be on the management team ever. So, get son, goodbye. These quotas are now being required, and they will be required to be met increasingly annually, or you will be penalized, and if you don't comply, the executives will go to jail. This does not apply only to South African companies. This applies to international companies with places of employment in South Africa. So we have two things happening here. We have the ANC broadcasting internationally that it's open for business, the ANC-controlled government, and someone like Minister Steenhuisen saying, we are the builders. He was just making a very nice clip yesterday or today, together with Mr. Ramaphosa. He's on the team of the builders, and these good guys in government now, we must just prevent the bad guys from taking over government, because these good guys are putting us on a path for growth, a path for being open for business. But what's happening in South Africa is that we're seeing massive escalation on ownership requirements, and we're seeing massive escalation, like unprecedented escalation, just in this year already now, of employment equity quotas, requiring companies to apply race-based, very heavy targets on their employees, and if they don't, they're going to get put out of business. It applies to international companies. So as much as they're telling Mr. Trump or the White House, or in fact any major economy's president or minister or diplomat right now that you'll be fine, their businesses actually won't be fine, because they are going to be prohibitively infringed on based on who they apply.
Big part of what we do at Sakeliga is tracking economic policy. We keep tabs of it. We look at what's being announced. We look at what legislations is in the pipeline or coming out. We litigate against some of it. In the past year, I can't think of a single business-friendly, growth-friendly policy. Now, maybe if we went and looked in our files, we could, find one or two things, but it's been overwhelmingly anti-growth. So to be, the reality and the rhetoric are just not matching up. They simply do not match up. And I think it's that gap that is being exposed. I think not only by people like us, but I think to some degree the U.S. administration is observing that gap and is noticing it and saying, "Hang on, this actually doesn't comport." And businesses out there are noticing it because they live this daily.
Yeah, look, ships are passing us by in the night, passing South African harbours by.
Sure.
But those ships are
Literally.
actually a metaphor. Yeah, they're literally doing it, and it's a metaphor for what's happening with business investment here. So international investors are definitely put off by having first to understand what BE and employment equity is. Secondly, to apply what is patently illegal in their country. So a country like Germany prohibits race-based employment. In South Africa, you are prescribed, you must do this. So it brings all kinds of moral and business challenges that people just, that just raises the return on equity required for investment here. And it applies to international businesses, but it applies to the African capital as well.
Yes.
And South African people in South Africa keep doing business here. People are making good money. The economy is producing, but we're not seeing the growth we can and we should. Why? Because people are diversifying elsewhere because of all the internal risks.
Also, the successful businesses we see are the ones we can still see.
Yes.
The ones we don't see it's because they've gone out of business, or the businesses that were never started in the first place because of the excessive regulatory regulation.
And just one more on this employment equity thing. We must remember now, you and I, we frequently use the term that this is targeted domestic sanctions against a section of the population, and it indeed is. If you look at these quotas, then white males are really what must be reduced in
Throttled,
the workforce.
yeah.
Throttled. It's really you must reduce white males. That's the key thing for these regulations. But there are gender implications there as well. Quotas on whether it's male or female in disability and so on. Those are complicating, but we must also remember that what is proposed here is absolutely devastating to family businesses of all cultures. So especially to minority groups, Indians, colored people in South Africa, white people of all the different ethnic backgrounds that are represented in this country. You cannot have a family business in South Africa under these regulations. You have to stay prohibitively small. You can never expand and be a successful, build legacy family capital in this country under these regulations.
Pete, there's also some just rank absurdities that emerge from this. So consider a business. So 50 staff is the threshold above which you start incurring these regulatory burdens. Now, if you've got 49 staff, by hiring one more person, you've just taken on a massive regulatory risk. So the marginal cost of adding that one person has just gone up massively.
Yeah.
So there's a deterrence in adding staff at that level.
And in reverse, if you have 52, 53 people, you just get rid of the last three people, and you're back in 49.
If I can mechanize a bit, if I can extract a little bit more out of the existing staff, get rid of 2 or 3 staff members, and I'm below this threshold, and suddenly all this burden is off me. Okay, but now we come to the shifting goalposts. So the one thing we know about ANC race-based economic policy is the goalposts keep shifting. We know that that's going to happen with employment equity. That's been the trend for 30 years. This is just another iteration of that, a fairly big iteration, but these goalposts will keep shifting. These targets, after 5 years, will ratchet again. That's one thing. There's a few dimensions they can do this on. The two most obvious ones as well are lowering that 50 threshold. So those companies with 45 staff who think they're, free and clear, in 5 years' time, that threshold could be lowered to 40, 30. There's nothing particularly stopping that.
In Namibia, it's been lowered to 10 a while back.
There we go. The other one is there's a for non-compliance. One of the potential outcomes there is a 10% of turnover fine, 10% of annual turnover. That could be ratcheted up higher as well. That's already a debilitating fine, but that could be made 15, 20% or something like that. And then, of course, these absurdities, these rigidities, it's been long known in this country It's been well studied. Labor market rigidity, the inability to hire and let go of staff easily. This just adds more layers of rigidity to this labor market, and the net result is always slower business formation, slower job creation, higher unemployment levels, lingering unemployment levels.
Absolutely. Let me make a point here that I think is underappreciated. People sometimes think that the problem with black economic empowerment is essentially the word black in there. But the economic destruction that comes from it is not inherently tied to the word black. It's inherently tied to the word economic, because it's the replacement actually of economic with political. And even if South Africa were a 100% white country and you had these policies just in other dimensions, everybody should own a certain percentage of the economy, and it should be distributed in this way and that way, or this is the regional the number of males and females in the regional and different ethnic white groups that should be represented. You would have the same disruptive effect.
Correct.
It'd still be disrupting society. You'd still be causing massive cost. You'd still be inhibiting growth. Now, of course, it all depends. Some countries have racial and not many have race quotas. Some have, but more often you get gender quotas, or not gender quotas, but some kind of gender incentive. And why that's not completely destructive all over the world is to the extent that there are ways around that, and to the extent that isn't as intensive as in South Africa.
Yeah.
What we're seeing here is the DEI capital, the
ground
zero of the world's of political interference in the economy based on race, especially on ownership and employment. And we'll get to some of the else.
You briefly moved beyond race there, because some of the real absurdities, actually, I mean, they come in the racial dimension too, but in the gender dimension, because there's certain professions, I'll just name one, like truck driving, which is 99.99% male for all sorts of reasons. Males like it, they want to do it, it's a dangerous job, you have to go along, night drives and all this kind of thing. The idea that you could take that vocation and turn it 40% female ever is just completely absurd. So the absurdity of this is substantial. We're going to be pushing back significantly against this from a litigation perspective, and we expect widespread non-compliance as well, and a real upsurge of opposition to this.